Hey guys, this is Dodger making a really professional looking vlog. So on the podcast earlier this week, I said that I was planning on making a vlog that would talk about my feelings about the first comic book versus the first movie, and then the second comic book and kind of my feelings pre-seeing the second movie of Kick-Ass. I figured that it's a good way to lead into the review next week, and also to put your guys' mind at ease because I think there's been some concern that my opinions in these videos aren't going to be my own opinions, which I understand. So to combat those concerns, this is just a vlog. This is not scripted at all. The most that I wrote out for myself is, hey, dummy, keep on track. Talk about the movie, then talk about the comic, then talk about the comic, then talk about maybe the movie. So to hop in, I should make it very clear that I am a big fan of both the first movie and the first comic book. The second comic book we'll get into later, but I prefer the first comic. So the first movie, when I saw it, I literally had no idea what to expect. And I wound up watching it and really enjoying it. And then later realized that it was based off of a graphic novel. And I was like, sweet, I have to read it because I love comic books. So after reading the first comic, I can say for certain with no wavering at all that I prefer the first comic to the first movie, because the first movie wound up skewing so many of the details in order to make them more stereotypically Hollywood movie. That bothered me. It was like they changed so many things about the romance. They changed so many things about the way that the characters reacted. And I think in the comic book, the characters reacted in more honest ways. Even if they were more visceral and kind of heart-wrenching, I felt more like the way that things played out in the comic book were realistic. And beyond that, I just found the characters far more interesting in the comic book. But again, I still loved the movie. I just prefer the comic book to the movie. So when I read the second comic book, it shocked me how different the tone was of each one, because the story that they're going for is very different. Like in the first one, it's kid wants to be a superhero, wants to change things, so goes out and does it. Whereas the second one is, it's already been established that there are plenty of vigilantes out in the world, and they've started to create groups and kind of change their focus. So it winds up being like bunch of bad guys versus bunch of good guys, whereas the first one was just more of an exploration of becoming something interesting. So the second book, while I enjoyed it, it was very different from what I was expecting it to be, and there were also multiple moments in the second one, which never happened in the first one for me. Multiple moments in the second comic that made me go, whoa! Like, just moments that, I don't want to say they made me upset, but they made me uncomfortable, which I'm sure any of you who have read it are like, I know exactly what moments you're talking about. And that made me a little bit concerned about the movie, but they've made it very clear that those moments aren't in the movie, which kind of relieved me. I'm not a person that advocates for censorship if it affects a story in a way where the story has shifted into something it wasn't meant to be. But in this case, I think that it was the right choice, because they were two moments in the comic that I didn't think were necessary. They were there to establish just how evil the motherfucker is. But something else that I want to say is that even though I preferred, man, it's getting dark in here. Even though I preferred the first comic to the first movie, I'm almost positive that I'm going to prefer the second movie to the second comic, because the second movie is so visually interesting comparatively to the first comic that, wait, did I say that right? The second movie, I think, is going to be able to utilize some of those scenes in a very interesting way, because there's so many fights. There are a lot of fights in the first one too, but again, the first one is more about like exploring a character, whereas the second one is very beat 'em up and very intense, and I think that that's going to play out really well in film. Also, because they did so many skews in the first movie in comparison to the first comic, are they going to have those same skews be a through line in the second movie? So those are kind of my pre-thoughts before seeing the movie. We will be doing a review next week, so tune in for that if you're interested at all. If you're a fan of the comic books, like I am, you will get a review from the viewpoint of a person who is a huge fan of the comic books. And yeah, we'll have fun. We'll discuss it. So tune in next week. Honk honk.